Good evening, and welcome to our Public Safety Committee meeting. We have no council members present, and I believe we have two participants. One is Don Williams, and I'm not sure if the other is actually us. So we only have Don Williams online. We can continue. I don't know if we legally can continue with a sort of an open public meeting with no council members here.
It doesn't follow OPMA rules.
So we don't?
It's the mayor's meeting.
So it's the mayor's meeting, so we can just go through with it. All right, well then I will just go through very, very briefly for the record, since we are recording this. My first topic, my only topic tonight is about Damon Point. We have been coordinating with multiple parties on this, including the Department of Natural Resources and with the Quinault Nation Tribal Enterprises. The DNR has officially closed Damon Point as of today. They have made that decision in a meeting amongst themselves after seeing the videos that have been forwarded and sent to them. They recognize it as a danger. We are removing the Damon Point sign tomorrow. We were originally going to give it back to DNR. They said there's no point in giving it back to DNR because it was really Damon Island now. That's now a historical artifact. So we are going to donate it to the Coastal Interpretive Center. Just to show how much, things erode and how much tides change and things along those lines. So to be donated to them, the city is going to keep our beach approach closed for the time being. We are working just behind the scenes on alternatives to finding a way to at least get people down on the beach, but it will not be at Damon Point. If you've seen the video that was put out on YouTube on the city website, you will see it truly is an island at high tide. That water is going in and out of that channel at a fast rate, and that channel will only get deeper and deeper as tides go in and out. At some point, it will be well above my head, at which point that anyone, even an experienced swimmer, would have a very, very hard time getting across that channel, and hence the reason for closure. So for safety reasons, please, everyone stay off Damon Point. It is an unsafe environment. It is constantly changing. You can get stranded out there or much worse. And with that, I will turn it over to our police chief, Nikki Lowe, officer staffing.
I just wanted to let everybody know that our new hire, Officer Weston Free, started academy by checking in and then promptly returned home because he was advised that he's being activated. So for the military National Guard. So he will be leaving. His deployment date is the 24th. So he's with us for another week, and then we won't get him back for at least a year. And with that in mind, we have we have to keep his position open so we can welcome him back when he returns. But we have the two vacant positions that we're trying to fill. We test on Thursday this week, and we only have two applicants for that, two entry-level applicants. And if they're good, which they both done ride-alongs with us, the officers really like them. They've come recommended by other people because they are local here. One of them local here in Ocean Shores, and one of them within Grace Harbor. So they look like very viable candidates. We'll see what Thursday brings and go from there. But if they actually fill the two positions, I will actually be requesting from council to get another position, which I was going to do next year anyway. But with Officer Free gone for a year, I'd like to get it done sooner than later if possible. So just put a bug in your ear on that. But it's all going to be dependent on how the interviews go on Thursday. And of course, backgrounds after that. The next thing I wanted to discuss was surf rescue. Our surf rescue team was disbanded in 2013. Was it 2014? It was the same year. It was in spring and I came in the fall. So it was in 2014 that our surf rescue team was disbanded. We still get calls of surf rescue when the weather gets nice out there. People think it's time to go jump in the water, not understanding our riptides out there. We do not have the means to perform safe rescues out there. Our insurance carrier will not cover us to put together a surf rescue team. Again, there's so much liability behind it. The surf rescue team originally was made up of both fire personnel and police personnel. And between the two departments, we really do not have the manpower to put in the amount of training necessary to have an actual team that enters the water. And we absolutely do not have the funding to support that team. So I have been trying since I took the position of chief, so just over 8 years now. I have been trying to find some other way to perform surf rescues without actually having the personnel enter the water. And I found it's a buoy, a remote control unmanned buoy that can be sent out in the water. Person can grab onto it, and we remote control it, either bring them back to shore or send them further out into the water for Coast Guard to pick up and take to safety. Depending on what swells are like at the time will depend which direction they go. At the time that I found, it took me my first couple of years to even find those. At the time I found those, the only place that supplied them was overseas. I want to say in China originally. Since then, there have been a lot more put on the market, some within the States, but still most of them were out of country. And I did a lot of comparing of, what their actual capabilities were, what kind of weight can they carry, what kind of speeds did they have, can they go through the surf was the big thing. And it seemed like everything did great when there's no waves, like in lakes and things like that. But they get lost when you get any kind of wave. And even the ones that say they work in the ocean, it's because they're being thrown off of a boat and put into the salt water and deployed that way. But to actually deploy it from the beach, it's been really hard to find a unit that looked like it would be helpful for us with our situation here. I assigned it to a couple different people over the last few years, and the ball got dropped on following up on it. But more recently, we had Assistant Chief Mandela volunteered very quickly when we finally set it down. We had a rescue, I guess, out at Demon Point is what really triggered it. And he found the same thing that I was finding. We conversed, and I said, please run with it and find what you can find on this unit and see if we can't find one or two. If we can actually find one that we think will work for us, I would like to have one stationed up here at the main fire department, and then one stationed at the south station, so that we can deploy them depending on location of the surf rescue that is needed. We can deploy them. It would be with the fire department because they are manned most of the time. Unless they're out on calls, there's somebody around that can grab it and take off with it. As opposed to the police department, we're out all the time. Majority of the time, we're not even anywhere close. So I'll let Assistant Chief, I keep wanting to call you DC because it's and Mike. I'll let Mike take it from here and talk to you about what he's found so far.
Thanks, Chief. It turns out that South Beach Fire over at Westport, with the similar kind of water and conditions, purchased one of the water drones, remote control for rescue. So without getting your feet wet, you can use it like a drone in the water. The one that South Beach has now was purchased 2 years ago from them, and they went down off a rough coast in Oregon for a demo from an Oregon fire department that did have the same model. It had to be purchased from the company in China. It took them a year to get it here. Once it was ordered, due to all of the red tape and bureaucracy of buying something like that overseas and getting it through customs, et cetera, particularly through China. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs and if that has an implication, but as I understand pricing from buying products from China or other foreign entities, if the product is in stock already, that excise tax, whatever, that tariff had already been paid on it, so we wouldn't be subject to the more restrictive tariffs. The one that I'm looking at with optimism, at least, is called the Dolphin One, but there are 3 versions. The most expensive version is $8,000. It will right itself, so when it goes through the surf and it flips over, you put it in reverse for a second, and it flips itself back over and upright, and off it goes. The version that we would recommend, once we finish the study and make a recommendation, would have to have a camera on it, so that we can have eyes on the patient. At this point, it's probably going to be a patient for the rescue. It's subject to the frigidly cold water. There's a survivability related to that as well. So we can get prepared to package that patient once we make a successful rescue with a drone, if this comes to fruition. They actually love it. We're going to go out there and get a demo on one of the days where we have some rough surf and take a look at it. But the best news was that there is now a US-based reseller for the products, and he is based in Georgia. He's been at a conference for the past 2 weeks. He just contacted me today, so I'll be getting a hold of him soon. And I've asked for the spec sheets on all 3 models they have, so we can look at prices, we could look at battery capability, how long a charge will last on the batteries, et cetera, and go through all the details. So that covers kind of where we are with taking a look into the still investigatory phase of looking at a remote control device that would help. The reason why I think it's important is because, as the police chief just mentioned, we lack the training, we lack the tools and equipment, and we lack the expertise to go into that surf. The Washington Administrative Code 296305 is very restrictive, as it is now with the amount of training that we have between police, and I can't speak between fire and police, which I can't speak for the police department, but I believe it's similar, is we need to have training at the awareness level, which would be short and sweet, but that does not allow you to go in the water. Then you need operations level training, and then you need technician level training. It's a lot of training. It becomes a very technical operation to be compliant with the rules. It's also cost prohibitive. So that's why I believe that 2 things: to improve safety on the beach, particularly for the first responders who are going to want to go out and do something. But I've suspended their ability to go out into the surf and get their feet wet, because we're going to get a fine from LNI as soon as somebody makes a phone call to LNI. That's very costly. But we've had some very negative experiences here before I became associated with the fire department with serious injury and death of fire service personnel. And so that was one of the reasons why the dive team was suspended, or the rescue team was for the water rescue. So we can't do that. So one of the beside the recommendation to come forward when it's ready for a remote control, is to heavily sign the approaches and areas on the beach and advise the public there is no lifeguards. There are no lifeguards stationed. There is no rescue capability should you get in trouble in the water. And they swim at their own risk. And I can't believe, with disgust, what I've seen at times at the beach, where parents are back 30 yards from the surf and 3 feet tall children are playing in the water, and rogue waves could sweep them up in a heartbeat. And it breaks my heart. And that's not the kind of parent I was in the 70s. And it wasn't the kind of person that my parents raised in the 50s and the 60s. And so it breaks my heart. There's going to be a tragedy someday. And I just want to be sure that the city covers its butt for liability purposes. And I want to make sure that we can do anything we can within reason to make and effect a rescue that's appropriate and safe for everybody. Imagine the tragedy, and imagine the front page news when we have pictures of policemen, firemen standing on the beach can't go in and watching somebody drown. That's a horrible picture to paint. So I'll leave it at that. Enough said, but more to follow. The research is extensive and we'll bring you some detailed information in the future. Any questions on that topic?
I want to add something to it. The cost that Mike, that Mike put, the 6,000, we're not sure if that includes the charging station itself that goes with it, so it might actually be more than that.
It was 8,000, right?
I'm sorry, 8,000.
Okay.
Included?
And the camera.
Oh, it includes the camera? Oh, perfect. But as far as funding for that, the money would come out of 3/10. So we've got the money to pay for it. That's not gonna be the issue. So we just want to make sure everybody's on board and support the purchase. So,
And to keep in mind, if one is good, two is better.
So I had a quick question though, if, when would you anticipate wanting to bring this forward?
It depends on this availability of the product. I would love to have it by the 4th of July.
Sure. And when will you find that out?
Later this week.
Okay.
But I can't emphasize enough the lack of signage to make people more aware of the risk that's out there and the lack of capability that currently exists. Next topic would be, I want to give an overview of the emergency preparedness and response. So, you know that the council graciously approved the recommendation from the mayor and from Scott to have an ILA interlocal agreement for about $40,000, I think it was, round number, to have the Grays Harbor County Office of Emergency Management do the bulk of the work for the hazard mitigation plan, which is a 600-page document. We talked about this about a year ago and you approved it, our annex that's in that bigger document. And most recently, the comprehensive emergency management guide plan, which is also a 600-page document, and the city has an annex in that as well. That's going to be coming before council for approval on our annex very shortly. Relative to that, however, in the topic of emergency repairs and response, I looked for whatever the city had codified or resolution and ordinance for. So I found Municipal Code 2.72 for emergency services. It was written 40 years ago. The corresponding ordinance to go along with that was also written 40 years ago. It's quite out of date. So we're looking at making some recommendations for improving the language on that to bring to council to make some modifications. And so heads up for that. But here's what emergency management means and here's what it consists of. It's really 4 phases. And I like to keep things as simple as possible because emergency management and preparedness can get extremely complex, particularly when you have to comply with presidential decision directives, FEMA's regulations, state regulations, and counties regulations. So the emergency management consists of 4 phases. It's preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. Under the topic of preparedness, it includes planning, so plans for each kind of hazard you could possibly respond to. Then you need to train on it, then you do a little exercise on it, then you look how you did on your training and your exercise, and then of course, you're gonna go back and revise your plan because you're gonna find some things that didn't go quite well. So besides planning and procedures, if the preparedness means liaisoning with other local and county offices of emergency management and to perform a needs and a gap assessment for what it is we need to respond and be prepared for a tsunami, an earthquake, a serious windstorm and ice storms, and things that we see here. The next phase or phase actually is mitigation. We currently have that good 5-year plan for the hazard mitigation plan. Thank goodness they're only done and revised every 5 years, but it's necessary to do to maintain eligibility for FEMA grants. The FEMA grants, as you know, really greatly assist the city's ability and capacity to finance the things that need to be done to improve jetties and berms and other kind of areas that get flooded from the water that we're surrounded by. Mitigation also includes doing a hazard identification and vulnerability study, which we did as part of that hazard mitigation plan. So we're in very good shape there for mitigation. We know what we have. We know what we don't have. We know how we need to mitigate it. We just have to go find the money and pursue some grants. The next phase is called response. In the response phase, that's when everybody goes out and does what they have to do, whether it's police, fire, it's public works, and it's pretty much all hands on deck if we have a serious emergency here. But you also, in the response, need to form an emergency operations center here locally, who will coordinate then if it's a significant disaster that has a lot of impact that requires the city to call for more resources outside of the city. We have to request that from the county, and in a lot of instances, the county has to request it from the state. So there's a chain that works its way up to that. And an emergency operations center, different from a command post in the field for the emergency itself, the emergency operations center is the policy folks. So I would imagine there'd be the mayor, there'd be the city administrator, there'd be 1 or 2 council members, there'd be the police chief, the fire chief, depending on staffing capability, who would actually create the strategies to mitigate the emergency, manage the crews on the ground through information given from the EOC about resource availability to the incident commanders at the scene. And it's an awful lot of coordination, but we need to start looking at planning for an emergency operations center right here. And there's a space for that in the fire department in a large training room that we've already kind of configured with a couple of extra computers and more phone lines for everybody to use. The third phase is the response phase. That's when you activate your emergency operations center. It's important to know what your role and responsibility is within that emergency operations center. Then there's the incident command staff. They're out at the face of the emergency. There are checklists that would be developed for the people that work in the emergency operations centers so that you know what the job is. And it's a very simple checklist. And if you follow the checklist, you're really going to be successful at that job and in that role. But the response phase also has to consider the continuity of government and the continuity of operations for the city. In a very significant event, we have to be sure that government continues to govern. We have to make sure that government officials, elected officials in particular, can still create policy, can, what words am I looking for? Divert from the existing policy in emergencies, and the mayor has emergency powers, and you know this. But continuity of government and continuity of operations is an important plan to develop, and that is yet to be developed. And the fourth phase is the recovery phase, which is just as important as all the other phases and probably takes longer. It's probably the longest phase that there is, and much longer than the response phase, because when you look at the debris that has to be collected, who's going to do that? Where are we going to get the trucks from? Everybody else who's affected in the county is going to be calling for the same limited amount of dump trucks, dozers, and loaders. So we have to develop a plan for that, and in coordination with the county and their emergency operations center, because they will be the ones that actually order the resources for all of us who are affected, and then allocate those resources based on prioritization. That's where the policy people in the EOC become very, very necessary.
Question.
Huh?
Where's education come down in that for the public? Because quite honestly, with the disaster we're talking about, you know, I saw the report too, and it's not great. But at some point, you know, government's not going to be the ones responding and taking care of people. They've got to be self-reliant. So where does that come in to all this?
I'm going to get to that in the next,
Okay.
the next topic here. Finishing up on recovery, damage assessment, identify the lessons learned and document everything. And document everything because FEMA is going to want every I and dotted and T crossed, because we are going to be getting some money from FEMA, but you've got to follow their rules, and they can get a little bit complex. So moving forward, Lisa, back to your topic, that leads to training, right? We have none. Let's just be honest with each other, okay? Police and fire and other certain folks are required to maintain eligibility for FEMA grants to take several courses. They're online, fortunately. IS 700, IS 800, ICS 1 and 200. That gives people online through FEMA for free at your own pace to take the course. Some of them take 1 hour, some of them take 2 hours. Some of them might take 3 hours, depending on the speed. And then you get a certificate from FEMA that says you've completed ICS 200. And then annually, the county, well, start at the state, because FEMA requires every state to be sure that the position titles that are required by law, well, I shouldn't say by law, but that are required to maintain FEMA eligibility are required to have certification in the ones that I listed. And if we can go into, I can talk about this for days, but I won't. So a report gets rolled up from each city in each county in the state and then up to the state. And then the state rolls that forward with the other 50 states to FEMA, and that allows us to also maintain FEMA grant eligibility. That's one thing, that's the money. But the training that comes out of those courses that are, again, for free, online, self-paced, is really the key. Because no matter, we could have that offered to anyone in the city who wants to take that class just out of curiosity, or because they want to become more proficient in helping. So training is key, and you're exactly right, Lisa. But you also have to train on the plan. So once we have the plans for response to all the different kind of hazards that we have, then we start to train using the knowledge from the courses I just discussed to provide a little bit of additional training called a tabletop exercise that could be open to a certain number of the public, a certain number of elected officials, to actually walk through and ask people, what do you do now? What do you do now? So I'm fairly adept at creating these tabletop exercises. I've done it for different contractors. And they're quite fun, actually. So it's a little bit entertaining. You get to learn an awful lot without being embarrassed. And it really advances and propels the capacity of the city to involve citizenry to actually be effective in volunteering to help.
Well,
Go ahead.
the other thing we have is we do the AVERT training also. That people
That's
can
right.
sign-
And that's a great valuable tool we have. And there are 50 some odd, I think, of our
Yeah.
participants now.
And they're growing, and we're also sponsoring them anytime. In fact, there's, well, you know, Allison, the emergency go bag classes that they're putting on. We're really trying to promote that. It's, you know, it's kind of difficult for us to say, you know, it's not like we're not going to do anything. We're absolutely going to do the best we can with what we have. But Lisa, I get your point. How do we get the message across to the general public that we have to depend on each other and be self-reliant? And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people because they're so used, you know. So how do we effectively get that message across? And I think that the AVERT team is a really good avenue for that, to get that information out. And we also need to figure out a way to not sell that information, but disseminate that information to the public where they're not, you know, taken back that, oh, we're not going to do anything. We absolutely are, but we have to implement this plan. We have to come up with strategy and tactics, and we have to have resources.
Well, considering too, you've got a lot of personnel that don't even live in Shores. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
that you're saying in a perfect scenario, if we happen to get our disaster and people were in town, that's one thing, but figuring out how to do that, we as citizens have to take care of ourselves. And we need, you're right, we've got to figure out how to get that message across. But even to the point of having a town hall, now that that information has been released, but then also maybe even having some kind of a get together at the convention center that have vendors that can talk about the different products, but where we're preaching the to-go bags, we're really showcasing our routes on, you know, if you do get enough ample opportunity to get out, then, you know, how to get out of town. But really trying to hone in on that, and even getting the information available to people, to all the real estate agents who are selling houses, so that we're getting that out you know, immediately to anybody moving into town. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know we've got to do something.
I talked at length with Tammy a few times about a program called Map Your Neighborhood. I don't know if you've heard of it. I used to live in Trilogy in Redmond, and that's a designed community for 55 and over. A little similar to here, as far as the demographics go for age. And we did a town hall. And the Map Your Neighborhood divides the city, in this case, into small, manageable geographical areas. And then that 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 square block area has a block captain. And then they have their own meetings once we get this thing managed and there's a protocol. But it starts with training. You're exactly right. We can do Map Your Neighborhood to get more people involved. We can educate them on what their needs are for survivability. It's not 3 days and 3 ways anymore. It's
Oh, no.
7 days. Have your stuff for 7 days.
Gonna be more than that. but
Medication and
yeah.
pets.
2 weeks.
I mean, there's medication and there's your
Yeah.
eyeglasses, your medications, your pets. I mean, pets are a big deal. Fortunately, we have a lot of pet advocates here that will be easy to make a plan, but the steps will include drafting a template, and I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to draft a plan template, a plan for a response to 16 different things. But one person should not write the plan. I'll create the template, but the plans need to be made with input from the public, input from the business sectors that are here, input from the council, and input from police, fire, public works, and all the other city entities that we have working here. Now you've got a plan. If I wrote every plan, I'm not that savvy to know the ins and outs of the different functions that the city performs within their all their lines of business. So that's how the plans get written. Then you start to train on the plan. But here's the key. Once you have a binder of plans, it cannot be a book on everybody's shelf to collect dust. It's got to be practiced. It's got to be pulled off, dusted off once a year, twice a year. But the support for this and to build a culture for this, which is the important thing, is building the emergency management and preparedness culture in the city has to start at the top. It has to start with the mayor and the elected officials. Whether it's a town hall or brochures in the water bill, doesn't make a bit of difference to me. But as soon as we have the words to put out, the word has to be put out. I'm going to stop there because I could talk on this, like I said, for days.
I will say that annually, we started to implement very rudimentary starting point during the Great Shakeout Drill this year, where we actually took city staff. We went to the place, our rally point. We talked about jobs and things that people need to be doing. And I think we're just going to continually build on that and take part in the Great Shakeout Drill every year. And hopefully sooner than later, we can even get the public involved with it, you know, at a higher level than before. I mean, obviously, Assistant Chief Mandela has mentioned that we have pretty archaic emergency management policy. This is super overwhelming. There's a ton of work that needs to be done, but we have to come up with some plans. We really do.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. 100% agreed with that.
That's all I got.
Anyone, council, any questions?
No,
No.
just whatever we can do to help on that.
We will at some point bring in Washington EMD to sort of debrief everyone on the meeting that we had, that Deputy Chief Mandela, Chief Logan and I were at with Grays Harbor County Emergency Management and Washington State Emergency Management. That time's not quite right yet. They're still working on some internal things. But when they're done with that, we'll have them in and debrief everyone. With that,
Well,
no.
just, Hoquin's been doing the shakeout for years and we've practiced it live. And one time we actually took our prisoners, the inmates out of the jail and took them up to the cemetery where everybody meets. And we had quite a few citizens up there too. So once you start doing those type of things, you get a standard people that's going to always participate. Here, we don't have a really high spot if we have a
No,
tsunami.
Hogan's Corner is, we have a place at Hogan's Corner that is the highest we have. And I
Yeah.
believe it's about 65 feet in elevation.
50 to 60 feet.
50,
And
60
whether or not, depending obviously on the seismic activity,
Right.
whether or not we're gonna be able to get
Yeah,
there. I
it's a
mean,
huge-
right, so,
Yeah.
we probably need to look at developing, contingency plans as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, because, you know, I know as well as you all know that I'm just a staff member in Aberdeen, but I'm responsible as well. But the problem is you know, I know darn well if something happens, I'm gonna be freaking out about my own family, let alone worrying about my job.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we got to go bags for everyone. Our cars are equipped, everything's equipped. We take our routes up to the park every year. You know, we hammer it down, you know, frequently. And I just know that I don't feel as a citizen, let alone a council person, that I even know what to do in Ocean Shores if that happens. I mean, I know I've got my to-go bag and everything else, but as a citizen, I don't know. I think I just, you know, as far as I know, I was gonna crawl up on my roof with a 6-pack of beer, but
That's shown in the plan.
Yeah, it's funny how many people say that's their plan, but I'll be willing to bet that no one will actually partake in that plan.
Yeah.
no, but do you know what I mean?
I know- I get what
I
you mean,
don't
yeah.
know as a citizen, even in Ocean Shores, what my safest option is, except maybe hop in the motorbike and try and my darndest to get out. But you know, how many people haven't thought about it? And you know, and I know you can't make everybody function the way you want them to, but that's what I meant. Anything we could do to help. It's not going to be perfect, obviously, but just getting it on the forefronts of everybody's mind so that they're just aware at least.
And that's why I think bringing in the experts from Washington EMD and the county to kind of give a presentation at council would probably be the first step to that. And then designing what are the things we can do? Because there's a lot that we can't based on our geography and topography. There's a lot of things we can't do, but there are certain things we can do.
You know, maybe, and that's why I meant maybe there's an event at the convention center we hold where somebody comes, you know, where they have the free handouts of the radios, or you talk about those little pod things that people were talking about, and maybe some, you know, just all that information so people can stock up and buy supplies or whatever. But all those vendors, even, that might be a good opportunity for people to.
Okay. Anything else? We're adjourned. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you.
Bye.